This is the Team Objection Podcast for January 11th, 2022, episode 512. Look at the stuff on the screen if you're not doing the podcast version. It is the return of a segment we said we would bring back just recently, so it shouldn't be shocking. It's headlines with no music bumpers, no Molly, just headlines, but it's going to be fun.
Can we sing it?
Robinson.
Can we sing the headline bumper?
No. No, I did that for episode 100.
Man, I don't know how to do this anymore. It's been so long. It feels like we've had a week off. It's been forever.
Since we did headlines?
Well, that especially. I just didn't even mean like the podcast.
We did one last week.
No. What was the subject last week? Oh, yeah, the best. Yeah, that's right. Okay. It still feels like we
what
took
did
a
we
week
do
off.
last week?
The Sean's admittedly most excited, most anticipated show of the year that he has now completely forgotten about 7 days.
I just remember it was last week. Look, I'm so automatic now. That's what it is.
Yeah, exactly. He was so excited. He wrote it at the whiteboard and wrote everything down and forgot all about it.
Man, it's not a good look. I'm getting senile.
Yep. You are crazy.
Early onset Alzheimer's. I know some people joke about that. I actually mean it.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Dave has regular Alzheimer's.
Right now?
It can't be early onset if you're already old.
I am old AF.
Dave is the oldest man here.
My birthday is in 4 days, and I will be the oldest of all of us.
Oh, my God. Text me to remind me to text you a happy birthday when that comes. Or
That
I'll forget.
is friendship.
I can't wait to be like on Saturday, be like, hey, Sean, it's my birthday. Oh, my God, happy birthday, Dave. I can't believe you remembered.
I'm going to be like, I'm glad you reminded me, but I totally remembered. I was actually just writing the text. That
just
you texted
about
me.
to hit send. I actually had to delete happy birthday to type this actual message to you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So now you know my play, but that's what's going to happen. Headlines. Oh, my God. I miss headlines.
So back in the days, we talked about in our episode 1 retrospective, we divvied up headlines, and it was a whole fun time, and everybody had a great, wonderful experience, right? Because we would have, Molly record the reads separately, and then it was a thing, and we'd insert it in between, and one of us would come out of the gate talking about the headline as though we were reacting to her reading it live, when obviously that was not the case. In fact, she usually recorded them the night before the episode aired, and half of those back then were from Korea. That tells you how long it's been since that was the case. But instead, we are still going to have one headline apiece that we talk about, because rather than do some kind of formal read, we're live, for God's sake. I'm just going to rely on the person who gave me the link to tell me what the story's about, and guess who's going first? It's Dave.
Back when Korea was still a country.
That's
that
right.
was a long time ago. Man, Maisie never listens to these. She's listening to the one that involves cows. Spoilers, there's going to be a cow showing up at some point.
She's going to be a cow in her next life, right?
Probably, or
she
a pig.
wishes.
Or a little pig. Doug already, actually half the chat beat me to saying happy birthday to you too, by the way, Dave. So anyways, take it away, Matrix 4.
And before you do, I'm just going to say, I'm going to post a link to the story in the chat too. So for our podcast listeners, we're still going to kind of talk about it a little bit so you have an idea. But if you want to follow along, the link is in the chat.
Matrix 4, ironically titled Resurrections.
So I want to just make a very quick aside before I start on this headline. Right before we started the show, I was playing Mario Party with my family. So I didn't even get to play the final minigame. I had to run over here and do the show. I won. My wife just texted me and said that I won the game. So, yes.
What game? I missed it. I'm looking at spam.
Mario Party.
How'd you win not even being there?
I missed the last minigame. I did most of it, but just didn't get to play the last minigame.
That's why Mario Party's a flawed game.
Well, the best part is my wife texted me a picture of me winning and said, I hate you. So that's wonderful. I mean, we've got a great marriage here.
There was a whole infamous series of YouTube videos entitled Luigi Wins Mario Party by Doing Absolutely Nothing. And if you haven't heard of those, it's where they basically just had a controller plugged in for him, and all the mini games, they watched the computer freak out and kill each other, and he just stood there. So yes, to your point, Sean, there is sometimes a flaw with Mario Party.
Yeah,
there is. Anyway, what this headline, Matrix Resurrections, is about, obviously Matrix came out. It was a complete box office disappointment. As some of the more recent numbers I've heard, it was a $190 million budget. And up until most recent numbers I've seen, it's only made about $130 million in the box office. That's a flop. I mean, it's a $60 million loss on a franchise that's supposed to make a lot of money. And what I looked at this is, it was a box office disappointment. You can blame, some people would blame COVID for it, except Spider-Man has been awesome, so can't necessarily blame that. It released right around Christmas. A lot of people like to go to movies on Christmas. So I'm wondering, and what I really wanted to discuss when it comes to this was a movie that was released on HBO Max as well. We were a group that watched Space Jam 2, A New Legacy, in the comfort of the rental home in which we had borrowed for the week. We didn't pay $12, $13 a piece to go see this movie. How much is that affecting the box office numbers when you can see a brand new movie for essentially free if you've already got this service?
We did not watch Space Jam 2 in comfort. It was discomfort because it sucked.
Well, I mean, the place where we were staying was fine. The seats in which we sat were perfectly okay, but
so it's interesting, right? Because that's the first thing people turn to. Box office flop. I mean, there's no other way you can slice it. It made no money. But the first thing people are like, well, look at HBO Max, though. It's simultaneously released. Last time I checked, it had something like, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was about 3 million streams, which doesn't make up for the lost box office money either. So
they had 36 million. If you just say $13 a ticket times 3 million, I mean, that's still not enough. But
yeah. So
let's preface that with the idea that, okay, you streamed it 3 million times, but how many people watched it with those 3 million times? Did you have 4 people watching it? Did you have a whole family? Like, that does change things around.
It doesn't though, right? Because if you take your whole family to the movie, you don't get to give them like your movie pass and get in for free. If you're one subscriber to HBO Max and 20 people are watching it at your house, then I mean, you have to look at the system and say, if you're I don't know, Warner Brothers, are they the ones that did The Matrix? I'm assuming so, yes, because it's actually connected to Space Jam 2.
Yeah,
because they did a parody of it.
So bad. But then apparently it was pirated like a ton. It got ravaged from pirates. So what I think is interesting is I thought of this while watching Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man No Way Home. This is in no way Spider-Man 2 at all.
Not for any number of combinations,
6,
no.
Maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So Scorsese is like, I hate movies, and I hate Marvel movies, and I'm kind of like, I wish he wasn't so critical, because I know sometimes it's not high art storytelling, but it feels like we're reaching a point because of COVID and some other factors where if there's something that's going to save the theater and have there be that option to keep going in the future to see The Irishman, or whatever downer movie Scorsese is going to do in the coming years, it's going to be in movies like Spider-Man and the Marvel movies, because they seem to be the only huge draw to the box office these days. So I don't know why he's so critical if they're the vehicle that's going to allow him to continue to do what he's doing. Does that make sense?
It does, because I do feel, I went and saw Spider-Man this past weekend. I know it's a miracle I saw a movie in a theater. My God. But I did feel that slight twinge of, hey, this is kind of nice. I got my popcorn, I got a soda, I got to hear the surround sound, the big screen type of thing. It was a feeling that I haven't felt for a while, because I don't think I've been to a movie theater I really don't think I've been in the last 2 years. It's been a long time since I've been to a movie theater. So it was kind of nice in that sense to see a movie in a big screen. It was nice. And so it made me think oh, maybe I will go see other movies around in this setting, because it's been so long.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's an interesting thing. If you've seen The Matrix Resurrections, by the way, please give your score in the chat. Out of 10, we do things out of 10.
It is certainly ironic in a way that hackers are part of what may have destroyed the market for this, right?
Yeah.
To the point about movie theaters, it is. I'm surprised there haven't been more closures. I'm assuming that the idea is we just have to weather this storm, and eventually we'll come out on the other side and things will go back to the way they were and it'll be fine. Except the storm keeps extending and extending and extending. For me, I went and saw Black Widow in theaters because it was in that window where things looked decent last year. There was that time where the CDC was like, yeah, just cough on people. And then a couple months later, they were like, oh, shit, whoops. And before that, the last movie I'd seen in theaters was Sonic the Hedgehog. which
Yikes.
That was pre-pandemic completely. Though.
correct. Yeah, that was like late January, I think that dropped, or somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was just when we happened to see it. I don't remember. But yeah, before the pandemic even happened, and I was hoping maybe it would win Best Picture if no other movies were released that year, just to have this eternal scar on the entire like flawed premise that is the Oscars.
Yeah.
But no. Anyways, all that's to say, like I saw somebody, I think it was Soma, mention like I heard they were making a new movie but didn't have a slightest interest in another sequel. I think they had two problems. One, some people liked the first three movies and didn't really care if another one happened. And then two, some people didn't like the first three movies, or like me, didn't like 2 and 3 and didn't care if a fourth one was happening. Mm-hmm. That's a tough double-edged sword to fight. Because like Toy Story 4, I think ran into that a little bit, where people were like, Toy Story 3 was a perfect ending. I don't need to see this. But that series had enough goodwill from 2 and 3 where people mostly gave it a chance. After 2 and 3 for The Matrix, I think some people had given up on it, and it showed.
Well, it speaks volumes. I loved the first Matrix, like to the point of I've seen it dozens of times. Like I know that movie backwards and forwards. I didn't dislike 2 and 3. Obviously, they were flawed in many ways, but I didn't dislike them. But yet, I've had full access to this. I have HBO Max. I've had full access to this movie. I still haven't seen it yet. I had many opportunities in which to watch it. Haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, it was fine. It was, it was good. It was entertaining, but I didn't leave the theater thinking, I'm so glad that this movie is out now because it really wraps up the story. Although for reasons I can't say because it's spoilers, I guess, if I'm pressed, I would say I'm happier where they left this one. But we also didn't really need it.
I'm almost more curious just to see how they tie up the fact that at the end of the third Matrix movie, everyone died and now they're all back. So I'm almost want to just go to the beginning of this movie and be like, all right, well, how is everyone here? Okay, I'm good. All right.
What do you mean everybody died? Not everybody died.
At the end of the third one, Neo died, Trinity died.
Oh, the main cast. I think you meant whole city. Oh, the whole orgy-loving city died.
No, I
save
meant the main
it.
cast,
You know what?
The important people.
Yeah, we have to save that conversation for the Matrix look back that we're gonna somehow convince Chris to do at some point.
Yep.
He's gonna love it.
I'm really
I'll
excited.
be up there in a couple weeks, and we will do a Matrix. Because Courtney needs to watch it too, so we will just do a 9 hours of the Matrix, and there we go. We're done.
It's tricky. I mean, the first Matrix is a cultural phenomenon. And at the time, I mean, it blew up something fierce because we just hadn't seen anything like it. The visual effects were on par with nothing. It's been pretty much 20 years. And I'm not saying there aren't still stories to be told there. It's just kind of like, oh, okay. Like, we're going back to this world. It's like, yeah, but the world outside of the Matrix has changed so that the in-movie experience just doesn't feel like it's like this weird dichotomy anymore,
Well, unfortunately, the first Matrix movie had like bullet time, which they riff on this, but like all the action with bullet time included, that was crazy. Second one had the highway scene, which was bananas. They built their own highway.
Yeah.
The third one, the big fight at the end with the rain, people are like, it was okay. It was pretty good, but people point to that as like, that's the closest to Dragon Ball Z we've probably ever been in a movie. This one didn't really have anything quite like that. The one unique thing they did, I think they didn't nail it. It looked a little weird.
Is there this is not much of a, is there a big like speech, like the first movie had the Oracle where she kind of gave her big like dialogue plot. The second one had the architect. Like, is there that type of big like, okay, this is the key of the movie if you pay attention to this dialogue?
So it's just like a ton of exposition. There's a lot of exposition total. So it's hard to point to like one big scene. Yeah, probably. I don't know. It's too much exposition.
Okay.
And they, they kind of do a decent job of doing that. But I can't tell you who it is because that'll spoil it.
That's fine. I mean, that's fine. It's just that's actually kind of what I enjoyed about the first couple movies the most. Is like, hey, this is a really important scene. It kind of ties the movie together. It explains the plot. It explains, is a big reveal, that type of thing. Like, that was an enjoyable part of the movie for me. I always enjoyed that part.
We're going too much, Dave. But because here's a spoiler. I actually really like 2. And so we're gonna have a good talk and debate when we get there. Stay tuned, everybody.
Yeah.
Look, I'm even doing the end. We're
Yeah.
ready to move on to the next thing, but I don't have to do that anymore.
You don't, and I'm going to trample yours anyways because I have one last thing to say.
You know what? That's classic too.
Just in response to chat, I mean, the idea of like, well, maybe it'll still catch on in the future. Like, some people have enjoyed it. It's possible. I think one of the most interesting things we take from this, and who knows what the world's going to be like next Christmas, is, Christmas has traditionally been one of those huge opening weekends. There's usually like big time family movies there, and for some people, that's a holiday tradition. Even Christmas Day to go out to the movies. Is that the same experience when it's available via streaming? Do you care as much? Is it a big like, oh, it's like this thing we have to do, or is it like, well, it's online, so we'll get to it later? I have no idea. And again, they may not even be a factor by next December. Let's hope so. But maybe that kind of hindered it here, where it's like, Spider-Man, you had to see it in theaters, so it was reminiscent of that past experience. This, you could stream. Maybe that hurt it.
I don't understand. I will never understand the Warner Brothers decision. Maybe they had more confidence or whatever to put this against Spider-Man.
Yeah.
No wonder made no money. People are reticent to go to the theaters, and if they're going to go, they're going to see this instead of I don't think so.
Well, and I look at things like how Disney Plus has done this. When they released Raya and the Last Dragon, they had that as Disney Plus Premium. You had to pay for Disney Plus to get it, and then pay an extra like $30 to watch it.
So stupid. I hate it.
Well, I mean, but I understand it to an extent where it's like, this is a brand new movie. If you want to go to the theater and have like I have 5 people in my family. I just imagine if 10, 15 years ago, if I want to bring 5 people to the theater, I got to pay for 2 adult tickets and 3 kids tickets. But now, if I want to pay, which would cost more than $25, by the way, if I want to pay $25, I can have everyone watch it at once at home. So it's actually a savings to me if you have a larger family. It makes sense.
What you're saying, like purely financially wise, it makes sense. I just can't get over paying a premium for the service and then also paying for movies that are released on it.
But what the difference is when HBO Max is not doing something like that, it's just like, yeah, I guess I'll watch it. Like, it costs me nothing extra, so they're just losing out. I don't think people are signing up for HBO Max for this movie. It's not like the Netflix model where they got to keep churning out new stuff to keep subscribers. It's not that way on this.
I would love to hear some reports of HBO Max because early reports seem to indicate that it was paying off, actually, which goes against what we're saying right here, right?
Yeah.
Matrix Resurrections seems to overturn that in a lot of ways. So yeah, I would love to give it a little bit more time and then compare the two, compare Disney Plus and HBO Max and see did they make a good decision or not.
Yeah, it's just tough when there's so many other things on HBO that people pay for, series especially. You have last week tonight, you had Game of Thrones. Like, there's reasons people would pay for HBO Max, not the movies that are coming out.
Someone does watch parties on Discord. Why don't we do watch parties on Discord?
Josh says the same thing. You can do the Discord. You can do it over. I mean, there's a few different things. Me and Michaela for a while watched almost all of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood with Michelle over one of those services, and we could still chat. We could do voice chat. It was tougher sometimes if you had audio from show, movie, but that's a popular thing to do right now, especially during the pandemic. But again, if one person does that, I mean, hell, there's been a whole revolution lately about some popular streamers getting banned because they've done that publicly with their big-time audiences. They're not going to be able to crack that down, I don't think, on private viewings. But once again, if that's the same thing that's like akin to what Dave was saying, where, okay, one person bought it, they streamed it to 10 of their friends, and now they have exactly one ticket, quote unquote, to show for it. The whole business model is going to take some re-examination, but...
Yeah, see, Doug, why aren't we doing watch parties?
Because we'll get kicked off of YouTube.
Well,
we could do them privately. I mean, we could invite some of our regulars to do it with us on the side. If we had like, a business model and we could be like, well, for our highest tier Patreon subscribers, we're going to do this Space Jam rewatching and we could just do that, without it being publicly streamed on YouTube where we get banned immediately. But we're not a business model. We're just a made-up podcast.
We should do this for Space Jam 2. We watch it with all the people that watch the show.
No.
And we just riff on it the whole time.
I have to watch Space Jam 2
exactly.
again.
That's okay.
I love the idea conceptually. I will never watch that movie again. You would have to pay me to.
It's so bad.
Speaking of the Matrix, I can segue out of this, speaking in a way that I couldn't do before. Although it would have been kind of funny if we edited headline reads with that. We maybe should have more often, really, because we knew it was coming next.
Yeah.
However, Sean, this is you. Go crazy. I'll paste it in the chat.
Oh, God. So, basically, this reminds me... So, I had a bumper intro in our old show where I said, like, a cow has a history of violence and, like, stole a car and all. I'm back to cows again. And this time, the cows are being plugged into the Matrix. So, basically... cows. I don't know if that's a literal screen, by the way, or maybe it is. That would be scary, where there's 2 headsets and one on each eye of the cow. I guess you'd have to have it like that. They're strapping VR headsets to cows that make the cows feel like they're out on the, in the fields, grazing in the sun. And they're doing this to trick the cow to make it happier to produce more milk. And so far, it's working. And I want to hear what you have to say about that, Dave.
It's insane to me. I'm trying to think of how much more milk it would have to produce to justify the cost of the electricity, the battery, the buying the devices. I mean, I understand buying the device is relatively a one-time cost, but that much more milk? It's amazing that the yield is that high. This is happening. I believe the article said it was in India that it's happening, and I don't know. I don't think it's coming to the, the American farm factory that's out there. And I wonder how high of a scale this would be to, scale this onto a high level. But it's crazy that it's producing that much more to actually be profitable.
If you're Oculus Rift, are you just crossing your fingers to high heaven that this takes off?
Come on.
Please, God, 1 billion headsets sold this year.
Yeah. Well, we need is more microchip shortages. This is phenomenal. Let's stick them on cows. Let's throw them in the garbage. Let's just get rid of all of them.
I love Maisie in the chat just can stop consuming animal milk. To be fair, almond milk is really good. It's just really expensive. And so if we can hook up VR to almonds, that'd be great.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we can.
We can trick the almonds. One component of this that I think is interesting, there's the financial side, which you've spoken about. And there's also, supposedly, I'm not sure how you would ever measure this, the hope of the project was that it would make the cows happier as well, because it's, presenting a better environment than what they're in, which can often be cruel and is the whole genesis of why Maisie doesn't like it to begin with. If you can split the difference, I'm not saying this solves those problems, but if the cows think they're living a better life, that's at least an improvement over what they're doing now, right?
So I had a hot take, and it was that. Because when I read the article, it was this is the most inhumane, horrible thing I've ever heard. And I was like, look, I get the intent is not to give the cows a happy life, but if it's a byproduct, these cows, they're miserable on these farms. They don't sometimes even see sunlight. If they are at least tricked into thinking they're a little bit happier, even if it's for bad reasons, isn't that a little bit nice? Dave?
I mean, yes. I don't know how to justify it. I mean, yes, in the sense that they're getting a better perceived life because they're so dumb they don't realize that they're not in a grass field because they don't even walk 2 steps and run into the barrier. But that's cows. They're just dumb. I mean, I don't know. They have a life of servitude and they're animals. I don't know. It's tough to wrap my head around what's best, what's not best for them in that sense.
It's amazing how, I know they were like, oh, it's the Matrix because they're strapped into the thing. It actually is literally the Matrix because we are tricking cows to thinking they are living one life when they're really living another, all for our benefit to literally consume them. It's the exact plot of the Matrix. That's what the machines were doing to humans.
Yep, it's true.
So that's scary. So if you're the cow, you don't know the difference. It's like that, the shadow on the wall allegory thing. We were if all you saw your whole life was shadows on a wall in front of you, then actual a 3D person would blow your mind, your reality. You can't comprehend that exists. Have you heard this? Am I just making this up?
Yes, I think it's the idea that if you're used to one thing forever, seeing something else that is mundane to the rest of us would be mind-blowing. Yes.
Well, and the idea is if you've never seen something in 3D, you don't know what you haven't seen. You would never be able to imagine it, and that's what they're saying. So a 4th dimension. Anyways, cows are going crazy. That's what I'm saying. It's wild. Maybe it's happening to us. But didn't we do the thing? We're 50-50 living in a simulation?
I mean, people have said that it is not impossible, and they've got evidence to say that we're living in a simulation. I think that evidence that they presented is tumultuous at best.
Well, and they're 50-50. We either are or we're not.
Cool.
And I was well.
Mm-hmm. So it's like Plato's allegory of the cave mixed with Schrodinger's box, basically.
Yeah.
You never know what you are until you find out, but you can't because you're trapped in a virtual world. And it also probably leads to Sword Art Online, too. So great. Great. Everything that we loved about pop culture is coming back to bite us in the ass because we're just going to get taken over. And let's be honest, if we were humans and you could be in a simulated world right now over what we're experiencing, you would at least think about it. A lot of dumb shit in the world right now. If you could go to some utopia in a VR headset and be like, stay there. And I'm talking like fully immersive, not just like, I'm in a VR world. I bet you some people would do it. They'd be like, well, the hell with this world. This sucks. I'm in.
I've always thought I would take the red pill, the blue pill, whichever one keeps you in the Matrix. Yeah. I'm like, cool. So they're like, don't you want the truth? The real world? I'm like, no, this is fine. I live my whole life like this. You're telling me there's machines and orgies and like you wear burlap sacks all the time? There's no Lululemon and Zion?
Mm-mm.
No, I'm good. I'm good right here.
My mind went to, there's no Lulu from Final Fantasy X in Zion. If there was, I'd go.
Also true, though.
Well, your mind went there because you said orgies right before that, so you connected the dots.
In the new movie, they're like, we made strawberries. And I'm like, you know where it has strawberries? The blue pill. The real, the fake world. All the strawberries you can eat.
Cypher had a point. He said, when I put this steak in my mouth, I know it's not real, but my brain's telling me that it is, and ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
Like, I get it to an extent. I do.
And then in the new movie, Dave, this is like kind of a spoiler. They found a way to basically take the digital information of stuff and reverse engineer it into real life. So like the strawberries, like they know the texture and the composition, and they can engineer that into like Zion or whatever.
It's a replicator from Star Trek, basically.
Yeah, well, a little not so like fancy fake science, but yeah. So it's like now the digital world is informing the real world. It's the whole thing. Give me the stuff. Just give me the digital world. I don't need to wake up.
Speaking of cows, I don't have a segue to the last headline. It doesn't.
That's my water everywhere.
I didn't. I can't. I mean, I could connect it like a digital thing or something, but it would be a reach at best. So I thought I would just
do your best.
I will not.
Breath of the Wild. There you go. Speaking of digital worlds, I just did it for you. I'm the new host.
I've been bested. You're the new host. Take it home. Land the plane. This is my headline, so I have to speak on it. I don't know how to land the plane. I was just giving tips from my seat in cabin. I'm in coach. I'm just like grabbing on the fucking armrest. Land the plane.
I'm not even a co-pilot or a navigator.
Hold on, I got pasted in chat. There we go. I can't do too many things at once. I get distracted. You can see the full list. They basically had, I think, 50 to 60,000 people vote in Japan at the end of 2021, what were their favorite video games of all time. And I thought it was interesting for a couple reasons. Number one, Breath of the Wild is the best game of all time, according to them.
Interesting.
Which we've talked about on the show before. We did a full review, etc. It's also like a reminder of just how different Japan is from us when it comes to their games. And I feel like we've been losing that over time because, in the early 2000s, it was like, oh, we get this rare RPG imported from Japan and like, wow, look how different it is. But everything is so molded together and commonplace that we've lost that. America's top 100 list would look very different. If you can't see the full list, podcast, Sean, whatever, here's a taste. Persona, Dragon Quest, Fire Emblem, Zelda, pretty much any other JRPG you can think of. Chrono Trigger was 8th. There's some Smash Brothers. A lot of Nintendo is up there, unsurprisingly. Nintendo's the Japanese company. So there's some Animal Crossing, some Splatoon, some other stuff. But like, there's almost no representation for all of the big hits that you would expect from America. I think Dark Souls 3 made it in there somewhere, like in the 40s. Mm-hmm. There's a handful of American-based games, but for the most part, it's all games made in Japan, and they're heavily consumed by people there. And I mean, I guess that's true of America too, in reverse. But still, it's a very different-looking list than what you might expect.
I'm a little surprised that Nintendo is so high up because it's kind of anecdotal, I guess. But like, I know Metroid, for example, does not sell there at all. And it's kind of like it's spacey or whatever, so I kind of get it. But then Zelda is their favorite game ever made. Well, I bet you there's a lot of people that say Zelda is also the best game in America ever made. There's like a lot of overlap there, and then it starts to like wildly diverge. Because I'm sure Grand Theft Auto is not super high on their list. Red Dead 2, probably not super high on their list. And these are all games that would, at least, I don't know, both of those, what, Dave? Top 15, probably?
Yeah,
I don't agree, but if you're doing an American list, you'd probably bet to have those in the top 15, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Red Dead 2 would be very high on a lot of people's list and on mine. It was fantastic.
Neither of those series at all.
Last of Us probably would be up there on American one, probably not on the Japanese one anywhere at all, the top 100.
Yeah, it feels interesting. Like, there's a couple things that I think about. Like, it said Persona was extremely high on Japanese lists, which makes sense. It's, that a game is Japanese social specific. Like, I enjoyed that for the fact of like, okay, I feel like this is a different experience than my normal life because I'm American and they're Japanese. So it's kind of cool seeing that different thing. But like I saw something on YouTube where they literally have like Persona concerts where they'll just go through. I wish I remembered the name of it. It was like Persona Bang, or I can't remember the name of what it was, Persona Bomb or something like that, which was awesome. Like I watched a lot of it and I loved it.
Super Music Bomb.
That's it. Yeah, Super Music
I watched
Bomb.
it.
Yeah,
Michaela and I did.
I thought it was fantastic. I was like pumped up. Like they started playing Wake Up, Get Out There. I'm like, They have a whole like full concert set up with thousands in attendance and like coordinated glow sticks and cosplay people dancing on stage. It's like a whole full show. Yes, loved it. Anyway, but my point of that is bringing that up is like these are cultural things in there that take on the life of their own that don't here. Like we don't have concerts for video games here. I mean, yeah, we have. Like there are Halo people who like the Halo music, but there's not like huge events like this based on video games. So it's more of a social thing, I think, there, which leads to people liking it more.
Yeah, I mean, we get some of the concerts, but what are the concerts we have? There's Final Fantasy, which is
Zelda.
Yeah, Kingdom Hearts, same thing. Where was Kingdom Hearts on that list?
2 is 16.
There you go. Yep.
I can see it there. I don't see 1. I'm sure I won't. Well, I was going to say I won't find 3, but there is some recency bias in this list. Number 1 is 49, and I'm scrolling and reading really quickly, and I don't see 3.
I get that there's differences, but what about being Japanese makes you like bad games is what I'm wondering. Like Dragon Quest being one of the best ever. I'm like, it's barely even a good series, let alone the best of all time.
I think it's when it hits. We got so many of the Dragon Quest games so long after they came out that it's really hard to judge them in a contemporary lens, Because like Dragon Quest VIII is pretty well regarded even in the States, but that was really the first one that had a big promotional campaign behind it. Because we had like Dragon Warrior on the NES, but people weren't really playing those type of games back then in droves.
Yeah.
Same with the first Final Fantasy when it first came out. A lot of people have gone back since. But that was a really strange pickup if you had no idea what you were getting into.
They're so boring. But let me say, Fire Emblem pleases me a lot that it's up there. But it also confuses me. This must be like a new thing that people really like Fire Emblem, because if Japan was so obsessed with Fire Emblem, why was it almost a series that was completely killed? Like, did it kind of even in Japan, Awakening was like a resurgence?
I think so. I think people really liked the early games, which is why you saw like Roy in Smash, even though he had no connection to America whatsoever at the time. But Awakening kind of served both. It really established a better footprint for Fire Emblem in America and kind of rekindled that interest, yeah.
I remember Roy coming into, I think it was Smash Bros. On the GameCube, and I'm like, who the hell is this? Like, I had literally no idea.
And as a huge Fire Emblem fan that I am now, I also had no idea. It's probably what got me interested in that series. But, yeah, I was like, who are these guys? They're the same, kind of.
Soma brings up a good point in the chat of where, like, a lot of the lexicon in games have come up and made its way into the mainstream Japanese language. I'm trying to think of video games in America that have made their way into normal language, or terms from video games that have made their way into normal language. And I think in an ironic sense, people were using like pwned or something like that. It was a very short-lived thing, but it didn't ever even hit mainstream. It was like an ironic thing more so. I can't think of anything that's hit mainstream.
Maybe you can look at like, not quite the same way of like lexicon, but like Fortnite I know is wildly influential. Minecraft is huge for stuff like that. Interestingly enough, both games I don't really like, but that's interesting. I would like to go through this list and see.
There's some stunners in here. I'm going to point out a few just to bring them up because we can't go over the whole thing. I thought about making this a full show topic. I had it in the planner for a little while, and I didn't think there was enough to it just because so many series are represented here and so many are not. But so Breath of the Wild 1 we talked about. Final Fantasy 7 at number 3. It would also be really high in the States. We have our own grievances, but it's really not that outlier of a pick. Like,
yeah, right.
I'm like, yeah, okay. Splatoon 2 is 5. I'm like, I had some people love Splatoon 2, and from everything I've heard, I've never played. It's a better game than the original, but I'm like 5. Wow,
all time, Japan. Come on, guys, you're embarrassing us.
Shooter, right? Like,
yeah, it's like a paint. It's yeah.
But
I'm sure it's good.
But it was mentioned in the chat earlier. It's like maybe it's an accessibility thing because you can get into that game easily. It doesn't require like a really high skill cap at the outset, like something like if you're gonna hop into Call of Duty.
Forget it.
You're probably going to get fucking killed.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, it's not,
play it, really.
And it's going to be like bad and brutal and violent. Whereas like with Splatoon, it's just, it's Inklings and they have ink and they're shooting paint and it's all wonderful. Okay. I guess I could see it. There's some heavy hitters in the top 10. Smash Ultimate is 7. Chrono Trigger's 8. Final Fantasy 10 is 9. Mario 3 is 10. Like, these are all things that we would have probably in our top 25s, or at least our collective one for sure, given how people would vote on them. Pokemon Sword Shield is 14. I'm like, I don't know about that either. I think that's a little high. That might be some recency bias.
Yeah. Well, I think we also have to face the fact that we're starting to become out of touch. Even though I don't feel out of touch because I'm still hip. I still play the video games and whatever. There's a thing called, what is it, Roblox? Roblox?
Yeah, Roblox.
Yeah, I'm like, I barely heard of this. It's like the biggest thing in the planet.
Oh yeah, it's massive.
I don't know anything about it at all. I couldn't even tell you what it looks like for a second, but it's making $1 bajillion.
That's one of those things that blows my mind. Where I do not have and will not have a TikTok account. Never have. Don't care. But I was like one of the first. I think I looked at the date. I was one of the first million people to have a Facebook. I was like one of the first group of people to have a social media account, but I don't care about the newest and hottest thing because I don't know, I'm out of touch.
But at least TikTok, right? Okay, I'm not on TikTok. I have heard of TikTok. I know about TikTok. By the time I heard of this Roblox thing, it was already the biggest thing on the planet. And then I was hearing about it and I was like, oh wow, that's bad. Mm-hmm. It's probably just on the dark web.
It's not.
And I'm so pure. I don't know what they're doing in the dark web.
Here's how I know Roblox is not on the dark web. They literally sell gift cards to Roblox at Fry's. Mm-hmm. Like the grocery store down the street. They sell cards to buy whatever shit you can buy in that game at Fry's.
Roblox is one of those games that's just you talk about accessibility. Like it has. You want to play dodgeball? There's a dodgeball variant of it. There's FPSs and survival game. It's like a platform on which you can put out any other type of game. So it's built a community. Like Josh mentions, he's played it for years. It is something that missed us. It was behind us as far as when it got super popular. But I mean, the amount of money people have poured into that game, I've never looked it up, but I'm sure it's staggering. Mm.
That's the stuff that, to tie this back to the Matrix, and I didn't mean to do this, but I realized I did. This is the stuff that makes me feel like I am in the Matrix. Like, how could this happen where there's something so big I've never heard of it? It seems fake.
I mean, here's the problem. It's going to get worse.
No, it's not, because it's fake. And Josh has been sent to fool me, and you're all been sent to fool me, and the article is, I am in the Matrix. I don't know what you guys are. Maybe you're all AI. I don't know. We're in it together. I'm not sure. Don't ask me. Let me think about it.
So Josh is Agent Smith, is what you're saying?
Well, I don't know about maybe one of the other agents.
Probably not tall enough.
Name?
Yeah, Chris is probably Agent Smith.
There you go.
When you think about it, it makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Anderson.
We've missed you. I think Sean just ate the red and blue pill at the same time. He was just like,
my mind just exploded.
Just eat all the pills.
Dave, they did a Matrix animated movie where there's a guy who ran so fast he broke the constraints of the Matrix, and that's what I try to do every day.
In the Animatrix, is that?
Yeah. Because I don't want to get out of the Matrix, but I want to prove that the Matrix can't hold me at the same time.
I'm happy here, but I also want to just let you know that I could if I wanted to.
That's exactly it. I like your limits, but I want you to know I can break them still. This is a consensual thing.
Wow.
So we follow up headlines with a thing that Dave can't even participate in, just to push him to the side. But we spent, 20 hours over the weekend.
Yeah, what year did we get to, by the way? Was it 9? I think it's 9.
I think.
And there's around 20 or so to actually complete the game.
Depending. There's as many as 36 slots in the settlement, so depending on how you go about it, it could be even more. But yeah, somewhere around that range.
Yeah. So Dave, we played a game called Kingdom Death.
I'm gathering that.
and it was because I see it's in the headline.
It is.
So I'm stealing Chris's description of it. It's kind of like a board game where like XCOM meets Dark Souls meets what's like the resource? Well, XCOM is kind of the resource management part. Dark Souls is the brutally difficult, almost unfair feeling that you get sometimes because your characters, like one bad roll, your character could be gone.
I remember that.
It's that easy, and you're just like, well, dead sometimes, or like retired, or cease to exist, or they wander off in the wilderness.
Or they just take some kind of critical injury that undermines their entire character to where they might as well not exist.
Yeah, exactly. And so Dave, the game is structured. You and your little survivors, you're in a settlement, and every year you go on a hunt, and you have to fight some kind of like some quarry, some mean creature that's really tough. And then there are like events that happen when you get back to your village, like you have to deal with like, or do you all become a bunch of cannibals, or do you create like music? It's like all over the place. It's really weird. You like innovate things in the village to give you a leg up on creating resources. And it's just like this crazy involved sim that's really, really tough. And it makes you want to get invested, but you can't because anyone could die at any moment.
Wow, on a board game?
Yeah. So our village,
in-depth.
so we created about 19 people. Our village is 19 people's big. And already we haven't had anyone die, which I think is really cool, at least to this point. But like, I don't know, what is it? 10, 12 of the village is like screwed. Like we have people who are insane. People have lost both their legs. People who are retired can't go out anymore. So our numbers are starting to dwindle of like viable new people that we can take out and who aren't completely boned from the word go.
Which we can fix. We can make people populate. We can shove them together, and then we can determine, how good they were at doing that. And sometimes, if you roll poorly, both of them just wander off in the wilderness after a stillbirth and they kill themselves. So that's pretty good. You try and get more people, and instead it's the opposite. It's a lot of positive reinforcement and really strong messages that the game presents.
You can use love juice, which creates the romance, which is not a great thing when you really think about it. Maybe it's just an aphrodisiac. I don't know.
I don't know. I wouldn't say necessarily it's an aphrodisiac, but the idea of like, well, this is all the people we've got. We need to at least perpetuate humanity. So that's my aphrodisiac for let's get this done.
Mm-hmm. And there was even a point at which somebody we were playing with asked that question. And it's like, like, why would this person do this with this person? It's like, well, because we're all going to die if we don't create more people.
Yeah.
In a literal sense, from like a resource mechanic, and also, you can think about how population works. If nobody ever has kids, then your 15-person village is probably not going to stick around forever.
But it's kind of like Warhammer, where it's like this huge box with pieces, models that you have to assemble, and there's like this book that's like gorgeous. The art is really cool. It's very like dark and gritty. Some people criticize it because it's like kind of sexualized. It is. One review was like, I can't give this any good merits because it's too sexualized. I was like, I don't know about that. But it is. And if that bothers you, then maybe don't play it. But I don't know. I don't care anymore, to be honest.
So is this like a Dungeons and Dragons style where there's like a DM who directs everything, or is it you, a team against the board, and the board has challenges that pop up that you have to have like power cards or like whatever things to avoid those disasters?
It's like D&D in the sense that your every turn is dictated by a card called like AI. So like you get the card that tells you what the monster does, and then you control the monster. But it's your whole team against the monster.
Interesting.
So it's more like the players against the board. Yeah, there are other games like this that have a similar mechanic. Even Gloomhaven to a certain extent is the same way, where it's like something is telling you what everything else does, and you all react to it. So there's not one person who has to create how the encounter is going to work or what mechanics are in place. That's all covered. It is all on a grid-based system, as you can see in the thumbnail if you're on the video side. It has its similarities, but I think we're taking a liking to this just because everybody's getting busy. Time is hard to come by. So for Lincoln or Sean or myself, it's hard to be like, all right, I'm going to spend 4 hours this weekend writing for our campaign that we're going to run. and then another 4 hours playing said campaign, because while that's really rewarding and I still like that experience, it's just not a thing we have a ton of time for now. So something like this that, I mean, setup still takes a little while, but it's nowhere near the prep it would take for D&D, and you still get a lot of like valued experiences out of it.
Yeah, that was a hard thing for me in D&D, where it's just like, this sounds like a lot of fun, and I just don't know how I'm possibly going to put that much time into it. So I get it.
Yeah, I mean, even this game is like, so we probably played 20 hours this weekend, and we are maybe halfway through.
I mean, that's good in the sense that it's that you're that far along, but holy moly, that's a long time for a game.
Yeah, and it feels like we have a lot left to go. But what I love about the game is that the combat's fun. Gloomhaven got to the point, so it's fun in the challenge. Every encounter is really tough. We approached at least 2 where we're like, there's no way for us to win this. And luckily we figured out a way. We haven't died yet, but it's like that all the time. So really, really challenging. And the resource mechanic, I love it because you're so resource starved the whole time. So you have to be really strategic about like, okay, we have like 3 hide, 2 bones, and an organ. There's about 20 different things we can do with this. What do we choose and what do we sacrifice? And then there's like 100 other things that we would like to do that there's no chance. There's not enough time.
What do you do if you die?
We don't know. So if a character dies, that's not a big deal. You get an event. There's probably something that helps you along. Although knowing this game, it probably hurts you too, long term. If your settlement wipes, I'm pretty sure you're supposed to start over, which I think is fine. I don't see us doing that just because we don't have time. So we're like at the point where if we're going to play a game, we want to see it through to the ending. If we choose to later go back and play the campaign again, that's fine. But I don't want to be forced to start a campaign over when our time is so limited to begin with.
I would figure you could make a note of when you end a year, like note your progress and then go back to the beginning of that year or something like that and redo it.
Yeah, we could house rule it, or we could impose some other penalty on ourselves, but not just have everything wipe. There is an entire page that I've avoided looking at because I don't want to know what it says, but I know there's a page in the book that's like, all right, here's what happens if your settlement dies. And maybe they give you certain benefits or things you carry over into the new campaign so it still connects, but I'm not sure because, again, I tried to stay spoiler-free on it. But the one thing I think it has going for it, well, I think it has several things going for it, but one nice difference to other things we've played recently, like a Time Stories and Aeon's End, Pandemic Legacy, things that we've really liked, is that this has ongoing elements, but is still self-contained. So if we want to start over down the road and play it, or we want to have one that's unique to like Dave when he comes up, or the Fialas and company when they come up, we can do that because like Pandemic has the one board. And you alter the board over time, which is super cool. But then when you're done, you either have to buy the game again, or like somehow ignore the elements in a way that's not really possible. Here, everything's tied to like the settlements and the character sheets. So if you want to start over, or if I want to bring it down to Phoenix and play with people, or whatever the case might be, I have that option. It, I think, had to because its price tag is pretty ludicrous.
How much was it?
How much would you guess?
Models, nice board, and like a really nice hardcover booklet that is the rule book.
150.
Try again.
That was a good guess. A reasonable guess.
100.
No, a bit higher.
Oh, higher. Sorry, I thought you said I was too high. Okay, so 225.
It's $400.
$400.
Oh my. Okay.
I bought it as like a Christmas gift for us because I know that to a certain extent we like these type of games. We clearly do. We keep playing them. Mm-hmm. We've played certain different branches of them, like I mentioned a few of them before, but this is a little bit pricey because of the miniature aspect and the building of it. And I've seen these that have been assembled and meticulously put together and painted. They'll sell individual like figurines from this for $40, $50. So there's like a resale market for it because they really are quite high quality. And so my brother-in-law, Chris, who I played this with before I brought it to this group, who Josh mentioned in the chat, like he's actually done that because he likes doing that. He's painted miniatures for D&D. He's done other stuff. So he has these really nice looking versions of them that he probably could sell and bridge that gap. I'm bad with miniatures. I have giant hands. I've never really taken to like the model airplanes or the assembly of things like that. And to be honest, when I bought it, I really liked the gameplay when I experienced it for that night with them. So I knew it would fit our group. I didn't know you had to assemble miniatures for it. I didn't know. I didn't do a super ton of research because I had played it. So I was like, okay. I knew they weren't going to come painted because I know he had mentioned he had done that. I was like, well, if they're all gray figurines, like whatever, like you can see in the practice image, that's fine. That still gets the point across. You know who's who, and you can see the enemy, which is an antelope with a giant mouth in its stomach that has teeth. But I didn't know I was getting into that. So if I had known that, like if I could have eliminated that part, because we just used other D&D stuff that we had as like markers and stuff, and it was like $200, I would have been a little bit happier. But I went into it knowing how much it cost, and I didn't care.
Yeah, I heard Jason and Chris from the other room. I was still working, and I just heard like, oh no, as the realization hit that there's a million pieces that you have to put together and glue.
And it's not like assembly. It's not like Legos with pieces that fit together. Occasionally, they have notches where they can do that. Most of it is just like, all right, you're going to have to get this type of glue that melts the plastic to the other piece of plastic and then fully assemble these things.
Yeah. So, Chris, did you love it? That's my question.
I really like it. If I was giving it a score, it'd be like an 8 out of 10.
Because I really loved it. And I think Soma said it mixes legacy with roguelike. Yeah, a bit.
Yep.
And even more like Dark Souls, which it kind of has some roguelike pinnings too.
Kind of.
But so Dave, you're actually your biggest thing that you have to that marks progression is equipment. Because if you die, most of the time you're it's implied your settlement goes to your body after you're dead and retrieves your equipment. So you want to keep innovating equipment, whereas characters, they can die like that. And we've had that. We've had some really good characters, and Chris had a bad roll. He had probably our best character. Had a bad roll, character retired. That was it. No choice. When he finished that hunt, he was done.
Yeah.
But he had good equipment because you want to emphasize equipment over character building in almost every case. It's just unique. It's very cool. I loved it. I'm obsessed with it. I want to play it again really bad. So I would even give it a 9.5 with a 0.5 off being sometimes it's too much. We had one bad square where each of us got hit with something devastating all at once. And I was like, this is too much.
So after doing a quick search, I just have to know, what are the pinups of death and what is all this that you can buy that costs an extra $100?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of other stuff I didn't even purchase as part of that $400 price tag. And you can see that some of it's tied off of the artwork, which is pretty. Again, some of it can be either grotesque or sexualized, which if that's not your scene, no worries, but know what you're getting into on it. It's kind of funny because like we've mentioned a couple times, the Dark Souls, that kind of heavier, serious, macabre kind of vibe, but there's also a very anime influence on it. Mm-hmm. And there's an entire 30-page manga in the back of the book. When you're like, okay, so it's Arkham horror-esque, Lovecraftian horror mixed with big tits. And I'm like, there's certainly a Venn diagram that overlaps. There's no question. And clearly the game's been popular with certain subsets because of it. It also has not gone mainstream for that very same reason, because this is not something I can be like, hey, I've tried to introduce some board games at home with my parents and whatnot, and just, some stuff that's accessible. This sure as hell is not that.
Well, I know one of the disabilities you can get, Dave, is destroyed genitals. Which is not actually sexualized. And it has a very real gameplay mechanic.
No, you can't procreate.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
And they'll say that you can engage in intimacy unless you're in the category of destroyed genitals, in which case you can't. So.
Yeah, we went and fought a phoenix, and I'm not going to spoil anything about the game specifics, but all of a sudden out of the blue there was a card that was if this phoenix hits you with this attack, you can never have children in the future. You and your any future children are obliterated, and you're like, what? I was just walking down the street and I was going through the forest and I was like, oh, I'll hunt this phoenix for fun, and now I got my balls obliterated. What?
Yeah, where you'll age 10 years in one fight. It's wild. It's crazy the stuff that they do. When you visit, Dave, we probably owe it to you to take you through at least the prologue, so you can see it. Even the mechanics. So you have to roll to hit. And then you have to roll to it's basically do you hit it with your sword? And then does your sword actually wound the creature? So it's 2 successful rolls So your odds of hitting, especially early game,
are low.
20% every turn. I mean, because you have to hit on both.
Yikes.
Yeah.
I agree with Josh. My head exploded as well.
I think he means literally, because I think my brother-in-law roped him into playing a separate time than the one I did with him. And yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, because basically you have, instead of hit points, you just have these different slots for each of your, head, arms, legs, whatever. And if you take more than the injuries that you can take on it, you roll on this table, and the table's like, all right, 1 or 2, you're dead. 3 or 4, you're mostly dead. 5 or 6, a major injury. And if you roll 10, it's actually okay for one. But, that's a 10% chance. So the game is basically telling you, yeah, you're going to have people get, legs severed and heads blown up, and that's going to happen.
Dave, I killed a boss. I killed a boss. I mean, with everybody, but, I got the killing blow. My arm sloughed off and was replaced with a cursed arm. And now I'm on a clock, and I'm gonna die soon.
Oh, but you killed the boss. So.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. And now the boss is gonna come back, and he's gonna be ready to fight that boss because he's already done it once, and also we don't want anybody else getting subjected to the same thing he did. So now they have this kind of mano-a-mano blood feud going.
Yeah, Maisie lost her leg and got disemboweled. Luckily, she recovered from the disembowelment somehow, but her leg is gone. And, it's not just leg is gone for flavor. She has reduced movement now for the whole game.
Mm-hmm.
How do you survive disemboweling?
We stuffed it right back in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Stapled it. We don't have staples, but yeah, we figured it out.
Just tied some rope around it, and there you go.
Yeah, we just triaged it. Here's what you do. You just put a Band-Aid on it and some Neosporin, and it heals just fine. I think that's clearly the case.
Doug, when you visit, we should take you and Michaela through it. That would be so fun.
Yeah, we could do that with them. We could start a backup settlement. So I don't think we want to do an individual campaign with a bunch of I think we want our main one with our core group. But we could do a second settlement with visitors like Dave or Doug and company or Michaela and or any combinations they're in to let them experience it too.
That's what I mean. I love it. Gloomhaven, we're at the point where it's we're ready for the end. I think we've enjoyed it. We've had a good time, but we're ready kind of for at least the first campaign to be over. This is I can't wait to do more. So
which is good. I took a flyer on it, again, having played it myself, and had a lot of fun that night with that group. It was also nice just to spend some time with people I don't get to do a ton with, especially in the pandemic. But I could tell from the game mechanics, I'm this fits our group. I know our group. I don't often give those wholehearted recommendations, and we've talked about it on the show before. When I do, it's usually a slam dunk. Mm-hmm. Doesn't happen very often. It's something I walk away from and go, yep, everybody else needs to do that. Haiku was that. Steins Gate was that. This is that. There's not very many other examples, but I haven't missed on them yet.
We were supposed to play 4 different games over the weekend, I think, Dave, and we played one. And it was this one. It's the one we started. We're we got to play it tomorrow. And we never good.
That's all that matters.
Yeah, we never stopped.
And part of it, too, was it's already all out. It's a lot to put away. It's a very involved box with a lot of built-in organizers and stuff. Props to them for that, because most games just give you a box and all right, figure it out. But yeah, I think it took over the weekend in a good way. And that's, it's hard to get higher praise than that. Alrighty. That is the end of the show. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. I hope you enjoyed headlines. It was fun bouncing everything back and forth. Looking to do more of these participatory things going forward, and I think this is a good start. But we'll be back next week with another regular show. Who knows what we're going to talk about? I mean, there's a Suns cast waiting to happen at some point, but don't even really want to talk about the NBA right now because it's a mess. But there's all sorts of other things on the horizon we've got in the works. Some we've talked about, some we'll make up on the spot. As always, thank you for tuning in, whether it's on the live format or via the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, all that jazz. We'll see you next week. In between episodes, you can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com or youtube.com/objectionnetwork, where I'm sure Phoenix Wright is going to
It's there.
Anyways, I'm going to end the show now. Goodbye.